And hello, everybody. Chiva Sean back here for my second stream of this year. Still learning how to use this Facebook streaming, but so far I'm enjoying it. It's almost like streaming directly on YouTube. Very similar um, aspects to it. But today I want to talk about party dynamics. It was a topic that was suggested to me from friends on social media, and basically, talking about party dynamics is more about, I guess, party makeup and balancing a party, which is usually done during your session zero, which is a great follow up and to my last video. Um, so, understanding party composition. So, what I've done is I found a couple articles that I want to briefly go over in regards to other people's thoughts on party composition and party dynamics. And my personal opinion is that when it comes to developing a party, I'm actually not overly concerned about the composition of the party. Like, do you have enough frontline people, fighters, barbarians, what have you? Do you have enough support? Do you have enough healing? I I see that as a mentality that comes from a lot of people playing video games, MMOs that have kind of bled over into the D&D world. Like and again, me personally, when I see people and their in posts and forums that I'm in that they say they want to make a tank. I look to myself and I'm like, what did your character wake up one morning and just when you decide that, oh, I want to wear heavy armor and run into combat head first? I guess so, but using using those terms, like using these MMO terms in D&D, in my opinion, really doesn't fit. It's more about the actual character themselves, your background, the character's future, what your character experienced growing up, as to how they got into their class, linked to their background, and then why they started adventuring out into the said world. Not sitting there and deciding who's tank, who's DPS, who's going to play support. Though I have noticed that the way a lot of development over the years on Dungeons and Dragons, that you see that a lot of these particular character types and classes are kind of pigeonholing into those specific roles. This article, it's an older article, but it has some decent information on talking about benefits of having a balanced party versus not. And again, going back to the session zero, a lot of times players will, they do tend to sit down and decide who's playing what, and is if there's enough. What's the word I'm looking for? If they have enough of each category in order to uh, play the game properly. Like you can go back to your classics. You have a fighter, you have a cleric, you have a rogue, you have a wizard or a spellcaster. That's like the quintessential three-person uh, mark there. And nope, thank you so much, Paul Bonelli, for that follow. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Welcome to the stream. So that's in second edition where I started. That was literally your classic party. They didn't have a lot of these subclasses or additional classes. You have fighter, mage, thief, wizard. Oh, well, I said mage. Fighter, mage, thief, cleric. That's what I really should have said. And there was your balanced party, minimum of 4 people. And then if you had more, you could add the paladin. You could add the ranger, who has a combination of abilities back in the day. Now you have so many different classes to choose from, so many different types of spellcasters, different types of subclasses of warrior that you can really mix and match just about any class into any type of role. Um, this particular article talks about the roles, and they start off, of course, with your frontline type of characters. And the frontline part is pretty simple. You have your barbarians who are generally there to, basically soak a lot of the damage because of their damage resistances. They tend to have high constitution scores, so they have a lot of hit points. And generally the ones that, head in first, and as they put here, is to protect the back line. We kind of discuss this as if you're playing in an army. You have your front line, you have your support, and then your backline people. Um, I always suggest to my players that they should have, or some, they should have at least one party member who's going to act in a frontline situation. Um, I've had parties where they didn't have a good solid frontline party member, and even some of the simplest monsters, especially if you're doing like a low level campaign, can wreak havoc on a party if you don't have at least someone who is designed to do the damage. Um, Utility healing. This is going back to clerics, paladins, bards. Bards can be considered a utility type character, someone who can heal the party in and out of combat. Druids are also part of that category. Um, are healers important? I've ran games without healers, and as a dungeon master, it is, 5e does a better job of this. Whereas even if you don't have a healer, you can make you just got to make, as a DM, I make a little more opportunities here and there for the players to do a short rest, for example, so they have the ability to get some of those hit points back, but they have to manage their short rests before they can take their long rest to get those hit dice back. So, as a DM, if someone's not playing any type of healing character at all, you just got to make sure that you give your players good opportunities to heal, to find, some downtime to do so. So, but most games that I've run, the healer class or clerics or paladins, even the bards, is usually always one person that wants to play one of those classes. So having healing in a party is not uncommon. Someone usually always takes that role. So very rare do I see anybody else not take it. I don't. He goes into the quote support category and talking about crowd control. Now, crowd control to me is yet another MMO ish type of term, where you have someone who can easily disable and hold enemies down to again control the battlefield. Paralyzations like monks are great crowd control with stunning strike. Wizards and spellcasters have tons of spells. Low level sleep is a great crowd control. Hold higher levels hold person is a great crowd control. And druids have, low levels have entangle. Again, all crowd control. Which if you like to play more of a tactical type of game, I guess this term is good, but at the same time, like I have a player right now. He's a cleric. It's a Norse campaign, so he's a cleric of Thor. In the very beginning, he was taking spells that he felt best fit his character, not necessarily what he was going to. He didn't know what he was going to face. So going into the first game, the first session, they all met, lived in the same town, and this was like their character's first time leaving the town on quote an adventure to solve a problem. He didn't even take any healing spells. Luckily, they had another character who's a druid type that that did take some, but he was, he's a cleric of Thor. He's got his hammer. He's more of like designed to be more of a frontline-ish type of cleric. So I liked that he would choose his spells based upon what he felt his character, based on his backgrounds and his beliefs, would take, rather than just sitting into the normal support, healing, crowd control type of character. As they go on, they would modify it a little bit as he was able to gain more spell slots, memorize more spells, as the levels of danger start to rise. So, is crowd control necessary as something to consider when you are building a party? I say no. It's not a necessary point. It's very helpful to have such a to have that availability, but I don't believe it is necessary. Disabling traps. My current party, again, they have no rogues. It's only a three-man party right now. They have nobody who has any type of proficiency in thieves' tools. I guess disabling traps, if you're a very classic type of storyteller and you like to do your dungeon crawls filled with danger, yeah, you're gonna need some to run traps. Uh, Honestly, I usually don't have a lot of people actually in my games that you'll use this ability a lot. I do like to do the occasional dungeon crawl, um, but a lot of the games that I personally run are usually outdoors, mountain, sea, whatever it may be. So you don't see too many. I don't do too many traps in a lot of my games. But it's definitely good to generally have somebody who's proficient in thieves tools to be able to disable traps. Like I'm playing a character who's more of like a monk, but he came from a criminal background, and you get the thieves tools proficiency, which you can use to help disable traps. So even though I'm a monk, my background, I have the proficiency in it, and it's generally dexterity based most of the time, and so is my monk. Actually have the ability to disable traps pretty well in a campaign that I'm currently playing in. What else we got here? The damage dealer. Single target or area of effect. Now, the biggest damage dealers, in my opinion, for one, it's single targets. I believe to me are mages because this is where any type of magic user, mages, sorcerers, even warlocks. Even the warlocks, their their access to spells is good, but they don't get that many slots. So the biggest damage dealer, in my opinion, are wizards, and I've noticed a lot that not a lot of people play wizard, just straight wizards anymore. They either multi-class into it, or they generally start as sorcerers or warlocks. Because sorcerers have, with their meta magic abilities, they probably can out damage a mage with like duplicating spells and stuff like that. But the use of their spell points is you got to be able to really highly manage that. Where as a wizard, I believe has access to a larger array of spells, and especially at higher levels, a mage can really outpace a sorcerer. Now, single target damaging. Uh, Wizards can do both. Even a single target damager like a barbarian would fit very well in this category, or even a subclass such as like an Eldritch Knight, who can use a spell, and as a bonus action, then also take a swing with his weapon. Again, needed in a group as part of a dynamic. Um, I think this is actually a little more important. Goes back to what I said before, that at least in every group, I always suggest that there's at least one good frontline character, fighter, warrior. Even everybody hates them. Some rangers, you can develop a ranger to be somewhat of a frontline character as well. But you want to see at least a fighter or a barbarian in a party, and they'll generally be more of a single target damage type. Magic users are great at the area of effects damage. Even some clerics have the ability, are pretty good to be able to do area of effect damage, but that's not really their focus. The face. This is where you have like your bards, or even warlocks, usually high charisma type of characters. Not warlocks, sorcerers. Um, but paladins are good here. Well, warlocks would be good as well. It's even in the caption. Um, I try to balance my game with some role play, whether it's NPCs or give the players a chance to role play amongst each other to help develop the group dynamic. And one game I ran, I actually had a bard who was the face, and he was even to the face to the point where he would just walk into a group of enemies, like say they were like cultists, and charm the pants off of them to lure them into false senses of security, and then to give the rest of the party an advantage on dispatching them. So having a good face character really, in my opinion, because I like the role play more than anything, uh, is a must have. And those who like to play those roles are actually like my favorites. They generally tend to be more of the leaders, because they literally become the face of the group. And the whole charisma score thing, that's not even necessary. Sometimes even just if you role play something very, very well in one of my games, I tend to allow it if it makes sense, and uh, uh, if the dialogue makes sense and the requests make sense. I have no problems with just allowing it to happen. Um, I do lately now have them make rolls to kind of make some of the game a little more balanced, because if I allow someone who's just really good at role playing always to succeed in role play, persuasion, intimidation situations, it's not necessarily always fair. It really depends on the situation. That was one article that I enjoyed, and then there was another article here that came up. Why Dungeons and Dragons taught me good group dynamics. And what causes poor group dynamics? Weak leadership. In most games that I have played, one person out of the group generally turns out to be the leader. They're not they're not even chosen. It's just one person just usually starts to stand out amongst the others. And if you don't have someone in the group that just naturally excels at this, it could actually be difficult, even for the DM, to bring to bring that out of somebody. So a lot of the times, I would actually have to have a discussion with the group and basically assign who's going to be the main decision maker, who's going to be the main leader in this particular group. Um, Currently, in a current group I have of the three, it's a barbarian, a cleric, and a druid type, and it's the cleric who's actually taken on more of the role of leadership. He's the one that's more outspoken, talks to a lot of the people, and the barbarian just kind of backs him up in this case. So he has naturally turned into the party leader. But if you don't have one, you got to try to draw that out of somebody in the group. Ooh, what is that? Oh, thank you for the share, Michael. So thank you so much for doing so. Shares definitely help get the reach out of the stream. So I greatly appreciate you sharing that, my friend. All right, we were talking about leadership, and if you've ever had a party that didn't really have a leader, and then please make a comment or even thoughts on how you feel if you have weak party leadership, has it really affected one of your RPGs? Um, excessive deference to authority. Um, this can happen if you actually have more than one leader type. And if you have someone who's a leader, but then someone who's constantly contradicting the leader, going against him, this it can be considered hard and a poor, uh, something poor in the group dynamic. It's hard to stop this because sometimes if the banter is done in a role play style, if they're saying this to each other in character, it could be for some good role play, but at the same time, it can start turning some role play situations to this circular argument where you're just going back and forth and back and forth and around in circles trying to make a decision on what to do next in the campaign. And that's when sometimes the dungeon master has to stop, pull them out of character, and say, okay, we need to help give direction on this and make a final decision, because I mean, the dungeon master is there to is a way he's a referee. He looks at the rules, and he's got to keep the game going. He's got to keep the momentum going. So having too much leadership, which explain here in the excessive difference in authority, is something you definitely want to try to avoid if you can. Um, Blocking, this happens when team members have in a way that disrupts the flow of information to the group. I generally don't see this problem a lot. Like, sometimes you'll see this if you have a group of people and then one person wants to be kind of a little bit evil. So maybe, or even like the rogue who maybe doesn't want that party to know that he's picking everybody's pockets as he's going along. And, but when it comes to flowing of information, if one person learns a big secret, excuse me, but doesn't tell this secret to everybody, but then you have everybody in the group kind of, you're all sitting around the phone. I've told the secret to this person. He decides not to present the said secret. Again, it's a balance that can cause some problems, but at the same time, it could develop into some interesting uh, role play within the group. Now, this guy's article states that creates a poor group dynamic, but I've seen it both ways. I've seen where someone's keeping secrets only to reveal them at certain points. That made the session even more interesting. It even made the group dynamic, as a party, on a role play scale better. Like, they didn't take opposed to it. Like, think of the story of like Robin Hood with Will Scarlet. Will Scarlet hated Robin Hood, but still joined him, was still part of one of his merry men, but had a lot of internal contempt for Robin Hood, and it made for eventually they resolved said differences, but it made for a good story, and that's the biggest point of Dungeons and Dragons, is to have a good story, have a fun. So the blocking part, I don't think it could cause poor group dynamics, but it really depends on your It's very situational. Um, Group thinking, when this happens when people place a desire for consensus above their desire to reach the right decision. This happens a lot. Especially when if you have a large group of people, like 5 or 6 people, and you need to decide what to do in a situation, and then everybody, you know half the people want to do A, half the people want to do B, and then you have like a split decision down the middle, and then you're like, well, we're not getting anywhere. If half you want to do this, half you want to do that, we all have to have you go in the same direction. So groupthink can definitely have cause a poor group dynamic, but this is also why you need a real solid leader in the party, because they can be that tiebreaker. Even if the part the leader can eventually say, well, we're doing it this way, and draw everybody into that situation, into the proper direction to keep everything moving. Let's see. How does D&D solve these issues? Know your team, tackle quickly, define roles and responsibilities. Like Dungeons and Dragons is good at defining your roles. I mean, that's the whole purpose of you having your class, you know. But again, I go back to I don't like you just to be specifically defined by you being a fighter or you being a cleric. If you want to be a frontline cleric, so be it. Don't think you just have to be. If you're a cleric, you're automatically a support character or just a healing bot. I even say the same things for wizards. With feats and multi-classing, you want to try to be like a frontline wizard that's beyond an Eldritch Knight. Go for it. I was thinking about making a barbarian bard, and people were telling me like, why you can't use your spells while you're raging. It's like, well, maybe I'll just select spells to use as support outside of combat or before I enter a rage, or run in with a vicious mockery, screaming at somebody, and then the next turn, uh, you know, to do some damage as I'm rolling in, and then bonus action, use my rage and cut the guy in half. Why not? It's you can do it, and then after the battle, I use cure, cure myself and and cure my friends. So you can, certain combinations people think don't work, but but it's what you want to play. I was gonna make a barbarian bard, make him like a skull, like northern warrior skull type of person. I'm still gonna play the character, but I decided just to go more bard into like a valor type of situation. What do we got here? Oh, thank you so much, Mark, for the share. I greatly appreciate any assistance anybody can provide here on this new stream of mine. This is only my second video. I am Chivashan. Welcome. We're talking about party dynamics, and from a couple articles that I was reading about how a party should, or what these people think party dynamic should consist of. Um, what else he talks about? Focus on communication. Uh, Something that D&D tries really hard to do is get everyone under a common goal that is normally a responsibility of the dungeon master. True. Um, I guess a lot of this also has to. They've actually explained a lot of this in the new Tasha's book about, uh, when you have your session zero, you have your group dynamic. They talk about patrons, and as one way to kind of get your party's dynamic together into a common goal, like you all work for a guild. So you already have a common goal. Your background's all linked, to this guild as being employees of this guild, or your patron to a noble, a king, criminal organization, Grand High Poobah Wizard. And Tasha does give you a good explanation on as to help start that objective, and then you're able to create the party together, knowing you have a patron, and then and then the party dynamic kind of groups together. Then with the communication point, now as me as the dungeon master, or you, I know I am that patron, I am that guild master, and it's my job to now present them with their tasks that they must now complete. So overall, when it comes to the party dynamics, is I honestly believe you play what you want, and I would always make suggestions as own in my session zeros to make sure that there is some sort of a good mesh between the characters. But if you all want to play a bunch of bards, be my guest. Bards can kind of do a little bit of everything, but you know your limitations. If you want to play a whole string of fighters with nobody healing in the background, again, be my guest. You have short rests that you can heal yourself on. You got second wind you can heal yourself on. You can pretty much face roll anything you can get to. But don't be surprised if a bunch of magic users kind of take you down. I try not to let these types of dynamics break from the role playing. Even as a storyteller, I'm not going to throw it back in their face. Like if I have a group of fighters, I'm not going to just be a dick and all of a sudden have them fight a bunch of magic users and mages that can just quote crowd control them and whittle them down one by one. Not going to do that. I try to be more realistic in what they're going to face in a wilderness or in a quest. If they know they're going after an evil wizard and they got a bunch of fighters, like they better prepare, gather potions to help them resist magic and healing potions. So they better know what they're getting themselves into. So I think really any party dynamic can work, as long as the players have a well developed idea as to what they want to complete and what they want to do. So with that, that's all about what I really have to say about party dynamics and my opinions upon it. I would love to hear your opinions on what you feel is important when it comes to the dynamics of your party. Stories that you've seen with, if you had parties that were extremely out of balance and just didn't work, or even the opposite, an out of balance party that did work. Like I said, group of bards, group of fighters, whatever it may be. Tell me your stories. I would love to hear them. That's what I got for you today. I'll be doing another stream probably on Sunday. I'm gonna choose a topic and just keep an eye out for that. For that upcoming stream message. And please, if you've enjoyed what you had to hear, what you've seen here today, please like and follow for more content. But I want to thank you all for your time. Have yourselves a wonderful evening and peace.